Hello, my name is Andy and I am the Village Idiot. I'm armed with a car and a GoPro and an unhealthy amount of time on my hands. I'm using that time to attempt to visit every civil parish in England. You're watching the West Lindsey series. This is one of the 9 districts of Lincolnshire and one of the county's most rural. It has 128 civil parishes. Let's see which one this episode's all about. Welcome back to West Lindsey, everybody. It's a cold morning this morning, but I won't say it's perishingly cold because the sun is up, and when it gets up over the Lincolnshire Wolds, it's going to get a lot warmer. So hopefully, as the day goes on, I'm going to feel a little bit warmer in myself and I won't need to be wrapped up just as much as I am right here. I'm beginning this episode on a little village green. Now, this place is quite small, but it's got a few things of interest, including a very interesting pub, the name of which has something to do with the local business, and we'll talk a bit more about that as we journey around Rothwell. The West Lindsey series is sponsored by Gainsborough Cycles, 01427 617 752. For all your cycling needs, this is your one-stop shop, located at 20 Ropery Road or online at gainsboroughcycles.com. There's a link in the description. Gainsborough Cycles, ask for Trevor Halstead. And this video is also sponsored by Jamie's Fitness Studio, based on Low Road, Grayingham, near Curtin in Lindsey. Jamie is one busy lady. Check her out by calling 07906 749 574 or emailing hello@jamies.co.uk. Online membership is available. There's a link to her Facebook page in the description. Jamie's Fitness Studio. Get fit, get happy, get healthy. Here's my disclaimer for people who may be watching me for the first time. I say things as I would in my native accent and dialect. As a result, I may not pronounce things in the same way as the locals do. Remember, I'm a visitor. It's impossible to know everything. Leave me a comment, spin me a like, and bash that subscribe button. Let's get to today's parish video. Today we're back on the Lincolnshire Wolds, and here we have the lovely little village of Rothwell, which is 2.5 miles away from Caistor. Rothwell sits in a small valley within the Wolds, sheltered by hills on both its northernmost and southernmost edges. It's a pretty little place, and it's popular with ramblers who walk the Wolds thanks to the plethora of footpaths which crisscross the area it covers. One of those is the Viking Way, which is just 2 miles away from the village centre. Rothwell is made up of a cluster of properties around a road junction on which stands the village pub, the Blacksmith's Arms. It's quite an important local landmark, thanks to one man in particular, Joseph Nickerson. Despite being born in nearby Thoresway, Nickerson is Rothwell's most celebrated name. It was he who founded a seed company, which still trades today under an umbrella company called Groupe Limagrain, the largest seed company in the EU. Nickerson is buried in the churchyard, and our walking route will take us right to his grave. He also has a memorial window in the church, dedicated in 1992. Rothwell's other landmarks include a beck, a playground, an interesting village sign, and a former school, which is now the village hall. Above all, it's a peaceful, out-of-the-way kind of place, the sort of village I wouldn't mind living in. Let's go and see how its current residents do. We begin on Partridge Drive, part of the main road through Rothwell from Nettleton near Caistor to Cuxwold, the small village to the south of Swallow. As it's a small village, it's not long before we encounter the village centre. This has a few little landmarks, one of which is the village sign. Now there's a plaque underneath this which tells you about it, and I did take a photo of it, but for some reason my phone didn't save the picture. Modern technology, eh? This is the one and only pub in the village. Named the Blacksmith's Arms, it's a popular haunt for the many Wolds ramblers that come through Rothwell. It used to be known by a different name. It was formerly known as the Nickerson Arms, taking its name from Joseph Nickerson, a highly successful local farmer who founded Nickerson Seeds in 1940. Despite being a celebrated figure in Rothwell, he was born in nearby Thoresway in 1914. Okay, our next major landmark is the church. I've just turned onto Beckside, which is the road I'll use to access the church. You pass a bus shelter by doing so, and in it you've got the parish notice board. So one of these is going to go on the board. There we go. That's Rothwell officially done. This street is called Beckside for quite an obvious reason. Believe it or not, this beck is linked to the one we encountered in Aylesby via a few other little streams. Just off to the left here used to be a large barn, which has now been demolished. I'm no expert, but I'd say new houses are going to be up here soon. Here's some of the current housing in the village. Rothwell's population reached its height in 1841 when it had 290 inhabitants. This was due to the ironstone mining industry, which flourished in the area in the mid-19th century. Many of the properties in the village now are relatively recent, but there are still some historical homes, like the Grade 2 listed Rothwell farmhouse, which you can get a good look at right here. Formerly listed as Rothwell House, it's your typical early 19th century farmhouse. Dead opposite is a footpath, and this runs up a hill into the churchyard. It's not steep, but you can certainly tell you're on the Wolds now. So it's about 7:30 in the morning at the moment, which means this church is definitely not going to be open at this time. Churches tend to open from around 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, depends really on who looks after them, I suppose. But this one definitely won't be open at this time. Doesn't matter though, because we can still talk about it just from outside as opposed to inside. Before we talk about the church, here's the grave of Joseph Nickerson. It's the middle one of these three. He died in Palm Beach, Florida in 1990. There's some more on him later, but while we're on about churchyard features, here's the War Memorial. This is for the First World War only, and it bears 6 names. The church is dedicated to St. Mary Magdalene, and it's Grade 1 listed. This originates from the 11th century or early 12th, and it was restored thoroughly in 1892 by J.D. Sedding. Among its features is the Nickerson Memorial Window, which was designed and dedicated by his sisters, Ruth Nickerson and Rachel Wilson, in 1992. As you leave the church, to the left is a dead end which runs towards another Grade 2 listed building, this one being the Old Rectory, which is again 19th century. We're going the other way though, along School Lane, which is where we find the village hall. A small building dating from 1856, this is the village's community centre. And of course you don't need to be a genius knowing that this is School Lane and that's the village hall to know that the village hall is indeed the old school. Okay, let's turn around from here and go back towards the Blacksmith's Arms, which you can see just there. We're going to take a left turn and then a right turn up a residential street, which will take us to a park, and that will complete this walk. There's not much left now. This is Wold View, where you can pick up a few footpaths across the hills to the north of the village, if you know where to go, that is. It's worth mentioning that Rothwell isn't just a haven for walkers. In the 1950s, it was famed for being a wild grey partridge shoot, which probably accounts for the name of Partridge Drive. By the 1970s, Rothwell was also becoming well known as a top pheasant shoot as well. Joseph Nickerson himself was a top shooter in his day, and it was he who planted some of the wooded areas around the village. Off Wold View, we find this small footpath which leads to the playground. Now, just so you can get your bearings, the Blacksmith's Arms can be seen, sort of, behind this. We've come around. in a full circle. And tempting as it might have been to have a go on some of the equipment, I made my way back to the road. Hello again, Partridge Drive. That's been a lovely little walk. So there we go, we are around the village, we're back to where we began. That's been the main village, but of course we haven't finished with this episode just yet, because we have to find Limagrain, or Limagrain, however you want to pronounce it. That's out to the east. Let's go. As we already know, in 1940 Joseph Nickerson founded the Nickerson Seed Company. It was a wholly owned plant breeding company which introduced over 80 cereal varieties to the UK and still accounts for a large proportion of the UK cereal market. He also founded Cherry Valley Farms Limited in 1960, which is a duck breeding company. Both were based in Rothwell, and Cherry Valley Farms still sits on this little industrial area off Croxby Road. In 1970, Nickerson Seeds was sold to Shell and subsequently Groupe Limagrain, or Limagrain, the largest company of their kind in the EU. They're an agricultural cooperative owned by French farmers. Commonly known as LG Seeds, this entire area is given over to their UK head offices. It's quite the expansive site, and by the way, if you're a rambler on the Wolds, you can walk right by this because it's on a footpath between Rothwell and Cuxwold. As you leave the business behind, you drive up this little road here, and you can tell you're on the Wolds now because there's plenty of hills around. Everywhere you look, you can see the glorious Lincolnshire Wolds, and now the sun's up properly, these are starting to look quite beautiful, which is a good thing because the next one will look just as good as this, hopefully. Anyway, I've been Andy, also known as the Village Idiot. This has been the parish of Rothwell, and I'm out.